Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a former Boeing 737 pilot, and in this video I will introduce you to a little quirk that the Boeing 737 has there. So, we are currently performing a step climb from flight level 350 to flight level 370. Our cruise thrust limit is currently the climb thrust. However, in cruise we actually want to change it to maximum continuous thrust. This is an SOP in my former airline since about 2 years now, and it has been established because some aircraft encountered severe thrust issues at cruising level due to the cruise thrust performance limit. But more on that later. So, right now we can see that we have captured VNAV path, and we're going to select maximum continuous thrust on that. However, the Boeing 737 is a lovely little airplane, and as you can see, as it now actually conducts the level off, the thrust has reset back to the cruise limit, even though the FMA was previously in VNAV path already. Now this is something that PMDG has only implemented in one of the latest updates, but it is something that the real Boeing 737 does, and that is quite annoying to be honest. So, once you have already been in maximum continuous thrust, you want to check again after any vertical movement of the airplane that you still have the MCT limit selected up here. In our case, as you can see, it is gone, so we have to select con once again. A good procedure to do that correctly would be to wait until the airplane has leveled off, give it a couple seconds, steady at level, and only then select your maximum continuous thrust limit once again. At the same moment, we just have a master caution fuel here, as the center tank is running empty. I'm going to cancel that out. So, let's quickly talk about why it is necessary then to actually set the maximum continuous thrust limit. The story behind that is a Boeing 737 passenger flight that entered turbulence over the Alps. Now, let's have a look at the difference in thrust between the different settings. The flight was operating in the cruise thrust limit regime, which means the maximum thrust that auto throttle could use in order to maintain airspeed was 97.7% N1 in the cruise. Now, the flight started encountering some turbulence and the speed started decreasing. In response to that, auto throttle increased to 97.7%, which is the maximum cruise limit in the current situation. However, as you can see, the maximum continuous thrust is about 3% N1 higher. Now, you will say, well, 3%, how can that possibly make a difference? And well, in order to understand why that makes such a difference, you need to understand that the N1 indication you get is not the thrust that your engines are putting out. So, the 90% N1 we see right now does not mean that you are getting 90% of thrust out of your engines. All it means is that your fan of the engine runs at 90% of the rated speed. Now, things become a little bit more fuzzy as we are living in the Boeing world over here, and in Boeings, values of greater than 100% are actually common for the engines. As we can see right now, our maximum continuous thrust is 100.7%. Sounds strange? Well, it is, but that's how the Boeing works. So, the maximum you can command with your thrust levers usually is 104%. Why that is, nobody knows. Boeing logic. Anyway, the thing I want you to take away from this is that the percentage of thrust is not linear to the percentage of N1. For example, between idle thrust and roughly 70% N1, so between 20% N1 and 70% N1, which is 50% there, you only gain a thrust of roughly 10 to 20%, depending on the engine, or rather depending on the type of engine that you have under your airplane. From about 70% N1 onwards, your airplane really starts to develop a lot of thrust. The difference in thrust output between those 97.6 and 100.7% is roughly 10% of total thrust. So those 3% N1 in the upper limit there equal 10% extra thrust that you get available by using the continuous setting. Now, you may be asking, so why do we have the cruise setting at all then? Well, the reason for that is rather simple. Those 10% extra thrust also come at a higher temperature, and a higher temperature simply means that your engine is going to operate, well, at a higher temperature, therefore putting it under increased thermal stress and thereby increasing, or rather reducing, the time that the engine has available between maintenance intervals and ultimately the end of its life. In other words, by limiting the maximum cruise thrust to a setting that is roughly 10% less than the maximum continuous thrust that the engine can provide, you can extend the engine life and reduce the maintenance actions needed by increasing the time between the different maintenance intervals. Now, that is the reason why many airlines have the cruise thrust selected as standard thrust limit. However, going back to our case study, where we had a Boeing 737 that was basically full of passengers, they entered turbulence over the Alps, they started losing airspeed, and they got into the amber band. Now, the amber band is roughly where you start flying on the backside of the power curve. Now, flying on the backside of the power curve basically means that the slower you go, the more thrust you need in order to maintain your speed. The reason for that is quite simple. If we go to the outside, look over here, we can see that our airplane has a positive pitch. Therefore, air is pushing under the wings and under the fuselage. Now, the higher our pitch gets while we maintain our altitude, the more drag the airplane develops, and therefore the more the more thrust we need in order to maintain our speed. As the airplane went into the amber band, the auto throttle increased the thrust to the maximum cruise thrust. However, keep in mind that was still 10% below the maximum continuous thrust the engines could have provided. Indeed, the thrust was insufficient, the airplane entered the stick shaker and in the recovery maneuver lost over 10,000 feet of altitude. To prevent something like that happening again, my former operator mandated the usage of maximum continuous thrust whenever you are in level flight in the cruising regime. So, in other words, whenever we reach our cruising level, we need to select maximum continuous thrust on the N1 limit page in the CDU. Now, keep in mind, whenever you use a vertical mode and whenever you capture VNAV path again, your thrust is going to automatically reset to the cruising limit, so you want to increase that again to the max continuous limit. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, then do let me know in the comments below and let me know what you think about this entire theory and standard operating procedure. I'm really looking forward to read your comments, and until then I would like to wish you a very nice day. Do like, comment and subscribe, as it does really help out the channel, and if you really like what I'm doing, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below, or I would be happy to welcome you as a channel member, where from business class membership onwards, you're going to get early access to new videos before they are released for everyone else. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you all again, hopefully very soon.